Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. This webinar is a presentation of the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA, and our host for this webinar is Nate Hausman. Nate is a project manager at CESA. And our topic for this webinar is NREL's STAT network. We will be explaining the opportunity and process for requesting solar technical assistance through the STAT network. And we have two guest speakers with us today from NREL. They will be giving presentations shortly. Before I pass it over to Nate and our speakers, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping slides. All of our participants are in listen-only mode. That means that you can hear us, hopefully, but we can't hear you. You have two options for joining the audio portion of this webinar. You can connect using your computer, mic, and speakers, or you can call in using your telephone. A very important note, we ask that you please submit your questions as you think of them throughout the webinar by typing them into the question box on your webinar console and hitting send. We will be reading through your questions as you send them in. We'll have a Q&A at the end of our presentations, and we will answer as many questions as time allows. So please type those in as you think of them, and we will get to as many as we can. And a final note, this webinar is being recorded. You'll find a recording of this webinar on our website at cesa.org/webinars, and we'll also follow up with you after the webinar within about 24 hours with an email with a link to the slides and the webinar recording. So with that, I would like to pass it over to our host for this webinar, Nate Hausman.
Thanks, Samantha, and hello and welcome everybody. As Samantha said, my name is Nate Hausman and I'm a project manager for the Clean Energy States Alliance. I work mostly on solar policy. Just for a little background, the Clean Energy States Alliance, or CESA, is a national nonprofit coalition of public agencies and organizations working together to advance clean energy. At CESA, we work with state leaders, federal agencies, industry, others to develop and promote clean energy technologies and markets. Below you can see on the slide, you can see a bunch of our state level member organizations, and you can see we've got some of the most successful and innovative public funders of clean energy initiatives. Next. Great, and one of the things we do at CESA is information sharing, and for that you can go to our website. It's www.cesa.org, and you can find a bunch of the reports and resources and webinars we produce. So on this screen you could see reports, resources, and even you can see this webinar listed under upcoming webinars. Again, that's www.cesa.org. Great, next. Excellent. So today we're here to learn about the Solar Technical Assistance Team. CESA is a participating partner on the Solar Technical Assistance Team, or STAT, project for this grant cycle. And we're joined today by two folks from the National Renewable Energy Lab, Erin Nobler and Alexandra Aznar. I'll just give quick backgrounds on them and then turn it over and we can hear more about STAT from them. So Erin Nobler is a project manager at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden. She's an expert in residential and commercial solar, state and local policy analysis, solar soft cost, and project management. She holds an MBA from the University of Colorado and a Bachelor's of Science from Marquette University. Alexandra Aznar is a project leader at NREL. She works on subnational clean energy and climate change policies and provides technical assistance to state and local policymakers. She holds a Master's of Public Affairs with a concentration on energy and climate change policy from Indiana University and a BA in Government from Claremont McKenna College. So with that, I'll turn it over to Erin and Alexandra.
Hi, Nate. Thank you so much for that introduction. As Nate said, my name is Erin Nobler, and I am a project leader at NREL working on the Solar Technical Assistance Team, or STAT, which you'll hear me say fairly often.
And I'm Alexandra Aznar, and I also work with Erin on Solar Technical Assistance here at the lab.
So during our presentation today, I want to go over the types of technical assistance, or TA, available under the STAT program, give examples of past TA requests, talk a bit about our program metrics and how we view success under the program, and then dive into what makes a successful TA request, what we're looking for, what types of questions you can ask, and then how to apply for technical assistance and what that process will look like. And then we want to save room at the end for Q&A. We are able to talk about our program until the end of time, and we promise we won't do that. So we'll try to keep it brief and answer your specific questions as you have them. So first off, what is STAT? STAT stands for, as Nate mentioned, the Solar Technical Assistance Team. This project is funded by the Department of Energy's solar program in coordination with the lab. And the purpose of STAT is to offer current, up-to-date, credible information to state and local government decision makers on solar policies, regulations, financing, and other issues that states and localities are currently facing as it relates to solar technology and solar implementation. So I also want to mention here that we have in 2016 through 2018, STAT is we now call it SET Network, and we have two fantastic partners that we work with, the Clean Energy States Alliance, which you're all aware of at this point in the presentation, and we also work with the National Association of State Energy Officials. And together we, the three organizations, make up the STAT Network, and we're really excited about this new portion, the STAT Network, with our partners. It gives us the ability to leverage the skills and knowledge of all of our partners to ensure that the assistance that we provide to states and localities is as good as we can make it. So I do want to talk about the STAT program in the past as well, because we have been using this term STAT since FY13 when the project began, and it has evolved over the years. So during fiscal years 2013 through 2015, STAT offered what we always called three different flavors of technical assistance. One was education or learn on your own, which includes webinars, fact sheets on various topics, things like that. And then quick response was 1 to 2 weeks of effort, and that is one-on-one direct technical assistance. And then we also had a significant amount of in-depth technical assistance, which was longer term, 2 to 10 weeks level of effort for our subject matter experts, I should mention. When we talk about time, it's as it relates to how much time a subject matter expert spends on the request. So our in-depth requests often took 6 to 9 months to complete. So those, as you can see, were much longer requests, much more detailed, whereas the quick response was really great for fast turnaround, questions that were a little bit less analytic and a little bit easier to answer in a fast, timely manner, which was asked for fairly often from our requesters. So in 16 through 18, so this is when the STAT network was born. And STAT now has 3 different elements, but they are definitely different elements. So this year we are pleased to announce that we have added utilities as one of the audiences that we're able to provide assistance to in the utility solar technical assistance. I'm not going to dive into that in too much detail. I want to focus on the state technical assistance on this presentation, but if anybody has questions about the assistance we can provide to utilities, please let me know. The second portion is the state solar technical assistance, which is what we're going to talk about today. And we provide direct technical assistance to state and local governments on matters that require solar market expertise. For the most part, and we will dive into this more, we are focusing on state entities rather than local government entities, just because we do have a lot of other partner programs funded under the Sunshot Initiative that are also addressing local government issues. However, if a question arises that fits within our scope, we do take local government questions. And then the final thing is the do-it-yourself online education. So we have enhanced the resources that are available to people on our STAT website. This includes basic policy information, policy basics is what we call it, resources, webinars, blogs, podcasts, all sorts of interesting things, and Alex will dive into this in more detail.
Yeah, so this is Alex. As Erin mentioned, I wanted to dive into more detail on the different kinds of TA we provide and start first with the do-it-yourself education component. As Erin mentioned, we offer webinars, fact sheets, memos, publications, and other resources that you can access to answer your questions. And these are for a broad audience here. We're always adding new publications about solar policy that impact state and local governments to this site. Our webinars right now are broken up into 3 different series that will help decision makers at different stages of their solar learning curve. We are not updating those webinars during this Stat Network 16 through 18 period, but we have a lot of great resources on there that are still applicable to questions today. We also have a new STAT blog where we discuss state and local efforts to develop solar markets in the U.S. And our STAT authors post weekly. They post articles related to events, solar policy analysis, and technical assistance outcomes for the purpose of informing the market in a credible and timely fashion. We really try to synthesize some of the solar policy technical reports and analysis that NREL produces, and we want to disseminate the main takeaways in a more digestible form for state and local policymakers. An example of this is the blog you see here on the screen, in which NREL analyzed how solar PV has been used to meet Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS, requirements in different states. This was a long analysis, and here we have a short blog about it and some links to some interesting tools that came out of that analysis, so you all can click here and learn some more. We also look for guest contributors to the STAT blog. So if you're interested in a platform to share a state and local solar policy success story or best practice, please let us know, because there's a possibility that we can use your contributions on this blog. And much of what I just mentioned about blogs applies to our podcast series as well. Our podcast lets you meet solar experts here at the lab and hear NREL analysts' insights on solar hot topics, is what we call them. Some of our past podcast episodes have touched on electric vehicles and solar, city-level energy decision-making, and value of solar, among other topics. And here you can see the Meet a Solar Expert Part 1 series with Carolyn Davidson, who is no longer at the lab, but was one of our economic analysts here at the lab. So turning to a different piece of the STAT program, I wanted to mention another way in which we help states, and this is through some in-depth technical assistance, which we're calling during this fiscal period the critical question. So this year, NREL and its STAT partners, NASIO and CESA, issued a call for states interested in what we call, like I said, that critical question. And this year's critical question focuses on solar and economic development. We will be working with a state over the next 6 months to understand how this state can deploy solar to achieve their economic development goals. And although the deadline for this year's critical question is over, it was earlier in February, states will still have the opportunity to learn from the state's experience as a pay-it-forward state. So pay-it-forward states will have the opportunity to work with NREL, NASIO, and CESA, and the original critical question state to help answer a similar solar economic development question later this fall. Now I'm going to turn it back to Erin to speak about our most common form of technical assistance and what we want to focus on during the rest of today's webinar.
Sure. So just to reiterate what Alex just mentioned with our critical questions and our pay it forward, although we have already closed that process, there will be an opportunity for other states to hear what the critical question is, and if it does seem to apply to your state as well and you're interested in more, you can always contact us or contact CESA or NASIO, whoever you feel most comfortable speaking to from the STAT network, and let them know or us know that you're interested in this question and you're interested in getting more assistance for your state, and you may be eligible to be one of those pay-it-forward states. So if this question does appear to be interesting to your state and very timely for you, please get in touch with us and we'll do our best to see how we can bring you in at this stage. So that being said, the critical questions process is more or less we're making decisions, but our direct quick response assistance is available on a rolling basis throughout the fiscal year. So that is available to you at any point. It's our rapid response technical assistance program. It's our way of having you ask a quick question and getting a quick answer if that's what you need. It can also go into more detail than that. It can be up to 40 hours of a subject matter expert's time, so you can ask a more detailed question, but this is a way to get something much more timely, as we know oftentimes your timelines are condensed. So that's what we try to do. And it allows for policymakers and staff to ask a wide variety of questions from, you can ask a technology question, all the way to policy and program design and impact questions. We can address if you're interested in best practices and things along those lines. And this program is accessed by a really short online application. As I mentioned, it provides for about 40 hours of assistance per request. And it is a streamlined process. We can offer a quick turnaround on approval so that these requests are met quickly in order to meet your timelines. So on the left side of this slide, you will see some of the applicants and topics of technical assistance that have been provided through this program in recent years. So as you can see, because these are not all from fiscal year 16 through 18, they do span both localities and states. But you can see some of the types of topics that people have asked questions about, and they do vary. As you can see, excuse me, you can ask questions about solar on contaminated lands, solar benefits, what solar-ready design looks like. You can ask technical questions such as inverter accuracy. We can help with RFPs, requests for proposals, and then we can also dive into some of the more interesting policy topics like net metering caps and financing options, and the always popular value of solar methodology. So now that I've explained that, we talked about the different types of TA we offer, and I've explained a little bit more about what you can request through Quick Response, I would like to better explain what makes a good TA request. We do like to make sure that people understand what we're looking for, because this project works best when we have a partnership with the state or the locality that we're working with. So the first step is just to meet the basic eligibility criteria. Applicants must qualify as a state elected official or staff or a state agency staff. So what we're trying to say there is it needs to be somebody who has the power to help make decisions. So that's just the basic check the box eligibility criteria. Next, we like to make sure the work being requested somehow ties back to the enhancement of the PV market in an area or a decrease in costs. And we can discuss this more in the next slide. So also, a successful applicant will be able to provide staff time to assist NREL. As I said, we try to make these requests a two-way street. We love providing assistance, but oftentimes in order to provide the correct assistance, we need information and input from the requester in order to make that request more successful. So for this reason, having staff available helps to ensure the success of this project. Now this raises questions sometimes. We fully understand that state agencies and state staff have limited time, and we respect that and we understand that. We don't ask for extensive amounts of staff time. We basically just need the availability of a staff member if we have a clarifying question or need clarifying documents to be able to present those to us so that we can come back and provide the assistance in a timely manner. It's also important as you ask your questions to point to a specific barrier that exists in your state or locality that is requiring assistance to overcome. So once that's defined, it's helpful to articulate specifically how assistance would remove or reduce that barrier. An example that we've had in the past is how streamlined interconnection process would reduce developer wait times by X amount of days. And then finally, it's important for the requester to be well positioned to make change. We kind of try to hit this in the basic eligibility criteria, but it is an added bonus if there is something already happening in your state or locality that we will see assistance directly impact. So an example of this would be an open docket proceeding or active legislative session. Yeah, so on this, we just wanted to let you know, as part of our STAT network, one of the things that we want you to be aware of is that the Clean Energy States Alliance, and NATE in particular, is here to help you. So if you need help preparing your request, if you want some clarifying information on what type of question to ask, or help setting up the scoping calls, NATE is well informed on how we make decisions at the lab, on how we provide technical assistance, and he's obviously very informed on what your questions are. So you can always contact Nate to help you with this. You can always reach out to us directly as well, but we also understand and respect that sometimes you want to work with somebody you're more familiar with. So just wanted to let you know that that is part of this process, and that is part of the STAT network, which is new in 16 through 18, that these partner organizations are able to help you as you go through your scoping and as you have questions about what you can request.
And if I could just jump in there too, I just wanted to say that I am very, very happy to review applications before they're submitted. You know, it's not an extensive application process, of course, but happy to look over and make sure it's a worthy request. And also, just want to reiterate, just underscore and encourage folks to submit requests, even if you're not sure. You know, the bar is low in terms of the barriers for asking for requests. So if it's not an appropriate request, you know, it's easy to let folks know that. But please don't hesitate to submit those.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. And on that point, we always like to point out that if you do ask a question that we don't have the availability of a staff member to directly assist with, we do have access to a number of resources that we can provide to you. So even if we're not able to provide one-on-one direct technical assistance for your question, we can always provide resources and point you towards other opportunities to receive technical assistance. So again, please don't hesitate to contact any of us if you do have questions regarding solar. Great. So yeah, so I'll dive in just a little bit deeper beyond those first basic eligibility criteria points. So keep in mind, we do want to help everybody. Of course, that's our goal. But as you all are, I'm sure, aware, we are operating within a constrained budget, and therefore we do need to prioritize requests. So in order to do so, once basic criteria for eligibility is reached, we try to evaluate requests in a few areas. So one in particular is alignment with DOE Sunshot goals. This is extremely important to our program, showing how the assistance may affect technology costs or grid integration costs, or how assistance may accelerate the solar market. These are all important in the decision-making process. And then also showing what the impact potential can be, how the assistance could be replicable to other states or localities, proving that the results of assistance will affect more than a single project. That all increases the likelihood of getting direct technical assistance. And also keeping in mind the area of NREL expertise and whether or not this is an appropriate role for the Department of Energy. If a request can be addressed by a private consultant or other agency, it may be less likely to be considered for technical assistance, as we don't want to compete directly with private industry. So finally, we want you to be aware of an outreach effort happening regarding our TA. We've heard oftentimes throughout, this was through FY13 and 15, and so we developed this page that people always wanted examples of what types of assistance we've offered in the past, who we've helped through this program. And so we've created this interactive technical assistance project map. This is available on the STAT NREL website under state and local governments. If you have trouble finding it or you don't find the links in our slides, which we do provide, you can just Google STAT NREL and it'll be the first thing that pops up. And then on the left-hand side of the navigation, you can see the technical assistance project map. And this map offers a lot of examples of assistance we have provided to states and localities in recent years. There's a bit of a lag time on this, as you can imagine, because we don't like to add technical assistance requests until they're complete, until we're sure that we've provided what the state or locality is interested in. So it's just a great resource to point people to who would like to see what types of assistance we can provide, what types of outcomes we offer. So please do explore this page. Let us know if you have any questions or comments. We think it's really exciting. We've heard that it's been really helpful to see examples, real-life examples of what type of assistance we have. And if you always have comments for ways to improve the page, we're always happy to hear those as well, as we want to make sure this is user-friendly and actually does what we want it to do, which is provide you with examples of our technical assistance in order to inform your request if you decide to pursue our assistance.
As Erin mentioned, we've worked all over the U.S., and you can dig into our stat map to learn more about the specific work we've done in each state. But I want to highlight an example of some recent technical assistance the STAT team performed for the state of Maine. And this, you can see the slide here shows a slide deck that we provided to Maine, and our project was called Distributed PV Adoption in Maine through 2021. So at the end of 2015, the Maine Public Utility Commission requested STAT assistance. They were interested in understanding the levels of distributed solar adoption predicted from now until 2021, assuming that no changes to the current policy and regulatory context were undertaken. So this brings us to some of the capabilities we have here at the lab. We have a model called DSolar that can provide estimates like these, and so we use this model to perform an analysis and handed the results back to the Maine PUC to inform their policy making. And here you can see a little blurb about the kind of assistance that the PUC requested and a summary of our analysis. What's really fun, and maybe some of you all saw this a few days ago, is that there have been some headlines about recent changes to Maine's net metering policy. NREL's analysis is referenced in the legislation, which you see an image of on the right side of the screen. We, of course, here at the lab don't take positions on the merits of net metering alternatives or other solar policies, but we wanted to demonstrate how STAT-TA informs state-level solar policy making process. It's really satisfying for us to see how our analysis can inform state-level decisions and hopefully move solar markets. And finally, I'd like to discuss how to apply for assistance. Quick response, as I mentioned earlier, is provided on a rolling basis and can be applied to at any point during the year. To apply, you need to fill out an easy one-page document. You can see that here on the screen. And it asks for basic contact information and a brief summary of what the request is and how it will help lower costs or move the market. Once you've completed it, you can send this document to stat@nrel.gov, and we will get back to you as soon as possible to move forward. And this document is available at the website listed on the right side of the slide. And as Nate mentioned, and as we mentioned as well, he can work with you and walk you through this application, and we also are happy to take questions as you work through the application.
And something to point out here, which I always like to remind people, oftentimes when people see an email address that is not associated with someone's name, they have a fear that this goes to a black hole. That's not the case with stat@nrel.gov. I'm pleased to tell you that Alex and I are the face of that email address, and we see your email pop up on our computer just like we would an email going to our direct NREL account. So please don't be discouraged by the fact that you don't have a contact, I should say a name contact. Here, when you send something to stat@nrel.gov, you are sending something to Alex and I, we promise, and you will hear a response from us in a very timely manner, we hope within a day or two.
Thanks, Erin. So I just wanted to recap the whole purpose of the STAT program is we want you, government officials, or state agency staff, to ask a question, a solar policy market technical question. Here at the lab, in partnership with our CESA and NASIA, we answer the question and we share the knowledge at the local and state level through presentations, webinars, white papers, and of course our direct, quick technical assistance, which we've been speaking about today. And then we really want that knowledge to be shared and the results to assist in the development of the solar market in communities across the United States. And so that kind of takes us back to that STAT map. We'd love for you all to explore the map, look at the kinds of questions different communities are dealing with, learn from the experiences in those communities, and then continue to ask questions so we can develop the solar market. And that's all we have for you today, and we'd be happy to take some questions you have about this program.
Great. Thanks, Erin and Alex. Really helpful presentation. And we do already have a bunch of questions that have come in, and please don't hesitate to send more questions in as we go. First question, noticed that some on the TA that's been provided, there's some presentations there. Are presentations or webinars, can travel be associated with technical assistance, direct response technical assistance?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is absolutely. The longer answer is, as you can imagine, due to our budget constraints, we don't necessarily offer travel initially, but if you do require travel in order to have an in-person presentation or for a hearing or proceeding or whatever that may look like, that is always an option, and we're willing to explore that option. We just try to handle some topics over webinars or over the phone or things like that, and then if there is still in-person travel requested and required to make sure that this can really impact change, we absolutely will travel, and we'll make sure that the correct subject matter expert is available for that travel.
Great, thanks. So in other words, TA doesn't have to necessarily take the form of a paper. It could just be a call with an expert.
Yeah, absolutely. So TA can take a number of different faces, as you mentioned. Sometimes presentations are best. I know a lot of times when we provide this information to an organization, they often need to then use this information to inform other stakeholders. So if a PowerPoint is the best way to do that with talking points, we can absolutely do that. Sometimes we just provide a memo that lays out different resources and different ways to provide the information. We can always provide a published white paper or a published technical report. However, those are usually more detailed and, frankly, usually not what the audience is looking for. They're usually looking for smaller snippets of information. So we always try to ask that when we talk through scoping of what type of deliverable is most useful for your audience, and we can change what it looks like depending on what your needs are.
Great, thanks, Erin.
Sure.
Next question is, would the integration and the economic value of energy storage plus solar, is that a valid research question for a TA request?
Yeah, the short answer also is yes. And so here at the lab, we're really interested in the next generation of solar questions that we're getting from states, and we've started to hear some chatter from states that there's a huge interest in understanding policy and regulatory barriers when it comes to solar plus storage. And we certainly have the capabilities here at the lab to answer those questions. A lot of people are exploring those, so we would be happy to answer solar plus storage questions from states.
Great. So in other words, it sounds like if there's any nexus with solar, including solar rate making, including solar plus storage, as long as there's a nexus there, that could be potentially a valid research question.
Yeah, exactly. So you're exactly right. So we are funded by the solar program at the Department of Energy. So we do insist that our assistance be related to solar. But we, as Alex mentioned, we understand that there's next generation solar questions, and so any nexus with solar plus as it relates to programmatic or policy efforts, we are happy to try to tackle.
Excellent. Another question, wondering if sort of, I know you showed the map of TA, past TA, but wondering if all work products resulting from TA, all written work products or presentations are available for viewing by other stakeholders other than the requester.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that doesn't have quite as black and white of an answer. So we do provide technical assistance to everybody. We try to make it in a deliverable that is something that we could share with other people. However, we don't publish everything, and the reason being is because not everything is applicable to other people. Oftentimes, for example, I would say the Maine PUC example, that was a specific analysis for Maine. We are happy to use the information that we learned through that process and inform others, but we just don't feel that it's necessarily beneficial to publish every single document that we create. So that being said, if you apply for technical assistance and there is something that's been done, we often use that resource and either send it to you directly to look at or alter it to make sure that it fits your needs so that it is actually for your organization and your specific questions, so you don't feel like you have to connect the dots yourself by us just providing an analysis for another location.
Great, thanks. And these are sort of related questions to that, but I'll ask them. Are quick responses considered public records, and the response, well, in this asks whether the response to another entity's question can be shared with other entities. Is there anything that is considered confidential, such as raw data that's provided?
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't come across that very often in state and local technical assistance. We're tackling that a little bit more with utilities. As you can imagine, they have some pretty proprietary information. If there is something of concern, we can always discuss that as the request comes through. We don't publish data that is given to us. We do publish results, findings, best practices, case studies, things of that nature, but detailed information that we get from a requester, nope, we don't provide that unless they're interested in using it as a case study, as a detailed case study, and they offer us that as an option for a way for us to disseminate our findings. But it's not general practice for us to publish that information.
Great.
Yeah, and sorry, I should just clarify, what is general practice is we do always publish who we're working with on the stat map and what type of question they're asking. Not details, but as you go on the stat map to look at examples, that's the level of information that we do provide in a public setting on our website. So if there's ever a concern about that information being published, we can try to address that, but we do like to make sure that just as you are receiving assistance using the Department of Energy's funds, we like to make sure that other people can see what types of assistance is available and what types of assistance we've provided so that we can help future requesters as well.
Excellent. This is a question sort of about getting at the time frame. You know, this is called quick response, but maybe that in some ways it might be a misnomer to some degrees. Wondering, just sort of, you noted that you respond usually within 24 or 48 hours to a request. What is the turnaround time overall for these requests?
Yeah, so it depends. I know people don't love hearing that, but it depends. It depends on if you just need a resource that we can gather, if it requires any deeper analysis or any length of time of a subject matter expert. It does take a little bit longer. We try to be respectful of if you have any timelines, but it's also helpful to know it's unlikely that you will be thrilled with the timeline if you contact us on a Friday and say, I really need this information by the following Friday. We always like to scope. We like to do that on the phone. We like to make sure we really understand your question, and so that takes a day, and then we like to go back and make sure we can find the appropriate subject matter expert. So once we have an expert on, we can start moving more quickly, but I would say the process takes a week or two to probably scope and confirm what you're looking for, and then depending on the depth of the request, it can take another couple of weeks for the subject matter expert to come up with their findings and deliver them. If it is a shorter question, if it is something like we are meeting next week and we really need resources on this topic, we can pull that together without a scoping call. That doesn't require a scoping call. But if it's anything that requires a one-on-one conversation, it does take a little bit longer. So on average, I don't know that there is a good average, but I would say that most requests, I'd say the main PUC request, for an example, from start to finish, including scoping, coming up with the document, delivering it, and then having a follow-on call, I'd say anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for the entire process. We can always speed that up depending on timelines, but I'd say that's probably a fair assessment.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, that is one of the questions on our application, is when you would like the information by, and as Erin said, we have a timeline we need to work with here, but we are certainly able to speed things up based on your needs. And of course, travel requests will take a little bit of time longer for us to respond to. So if you do have interest in expert testimony, or you think that you would need an NREL expert to attend a specific meeting, we encourage you to get your request in as soon as possible.
Yeah, I guess this is our plea to you, that if you know that you have a question and you know that you have something coming up on the horizon within the next few months, don't wait to ask your question. We can always scope it, and if we need to pause because you don't have the information ready, we're happy to do that, but at least you're in the queue and we're aware of your timelines, and we can try to address your question in a timely manner. So if you think something might be coming up and you want assistance, ask away.
Great, thanks. We've got a couple more questions in the queue here, but I want to stop just to encourage folks, if there are additional questions you have while we've got Erin and Alexandra on the line, by all means type those in. Next question has to do with a possible topic, would be the integration of solar in a renewable portfolio standard in an RPS, or the impact of solar on a state's clean power plan. Would those be acceptable TA requests, or would those be TA requests that would be considered?
Yeah, short answer, yes. Both of those topics are within our wheelhouse. We feel comfortable working on them, especially clean power plan as it relates to solar. We can always try to address that. We are limited in our ability to talk about other technologies, but we can always speak to solar and some of the policies that you may want to consider if you want to include solar in your clean power plan, or other policy scenarios that you might be interested in. The first one was RPS, and absolutely, we have quite a few experts on hand who have been dealing with this, who have written reports as of recently. In fact, on our blog, I believe that you can read a breakdown of a report that one of our experts, Jenny Heater, wrote recently. So yeah, ask those.
If for some reason, with the purpose of the scoping calls is to understand the level of detail and the depth of the analysis that the state will require. And some of these topics, when it comes to integrating solar in an RPS or clean power plan compliance plans, can be a more expanded effort. And so part of the scoping call will reveal whether we're capable of addressing all the specifics to the request in our program, or whether we can recommend additional Department of Energy programs that may be more applicable to the kinds of questions and be able to answer the question in full.
Thanks. Next question, is the technical assistance provided under STAT free for local governments or state governments for that matter, or for anybody?
Yeah, so we are pleased to say that because of funding from the Department of Energy, this assistance is free to the requester. So again, all that we ask of you is that you have availability to work with us and that you have the availability to prove impact, and the actual cost, other than time, is free to the requester.
Great. Okay, last question, unless other questions come in the meantime, and by all means, feel free to enter them into the box if you do have questions. Last question is just if you could explain some more of the analytical tools that NREL has available to it through this TA.
Absolutely. We have a variety of tools here at the lab. We are some experts in different modelings. We have a variety of models that will look at energy systems at a state level and at a regional level, and look at the different solar capacity expansion or transmission plans needed, and those are typically used for larger analyses. We have these other models, the DSolar model I referred to, which is looking at distributed solar and other forms of distributed generation and those kinds of impacts. We also have a model that's able to look at the economic development impacts of different solar policy and different solar deployment scenarios, I should say. And so a lot of these are tools and models that we at the lab use, a lot of our experts use at the lab. However, there are a variety of tools that are available for public use, and some of these are able to help you look at different sites and estimate the solar potential at those sites and the solar cost and the size of system you could put on a particular site. We also have a state and local energy data tool, which lets you look at the kind of energy use information at your state or your locality. And so we've got, again, I would group those into tools and resources that you can use as state and local decision makers, and also models that we are able to use here at the lab to simulate the greater energy systems in these areas for more in-depth questions.
Great. A couple more questions. Questions keep streaming in. So one question is, how closely, what defines state agency? Would a quasi-state agency be potentially, would this technical assistance be available to it? The particular requester represents an independent nonprofit that manages states' public purpose funds in coordination with the State Department of Energy, PUC, and Utilities, but they're not technically a full-fledged, state entity.
Yeah, I think that answer depends on the exact scenario. So whoever asked that question, please feel free to reach out to us so we can kind of look into it in more detail. It's hard to answer. I do know some states utilize nonprofits instead of a government entity to manage a particular program. So we try to work with those. We try not to limit those, but at the same time we are careful about to what extent we work with nonprofits as opposed to a state agency. And again, the reason is just to make sure that we're working with the person who has the ability to make change. So if there is a decision-making ability on behalf of the state or the locality, then that's considered. But again, we do try to work directly with the state agency that is available to make change to policies or programs. So whoever asked that question, please feel free to reach out to us and give us the specifics, and we can let you know if you're eligible or if you need to work with another organization. And we can always work with two organizations. We make sure that if there is some unique situation like that, we may not be able to work directly with the nonprofit, but if you have a partner at a state organization and you work collaboratively, we can always make sure that the nonprofit is also on phone calls, informed, available to listen to the findings, things like that. So yeah, so just let us know, and we can try to work with you to make sure that you can get assistance and that you're the appropriate entity, and if you're not, that we'll make sure that we get the right entities in the room.
Great. Another specific question, this has to do with, is project-level technical assistance available, and in particular, would it be available for a project that's exporting power to the U.S. transmission grid, but I presume might not be located in the United States? You know, what are the requirements there? And if perhaps the answer is the devil's in the details.
Yeah, absolutely, that's the answer. So again, we encourage you to reach out to us and let us know if you're not eligible because you are outside of the United States. We have access to other Department of Energy or non-Department of Energy resources that we can try to point you in the right direction if we're not the right people. But that being said, I'm not sure I can answer any more than that. I should mention, in terms of projects, we do try to steer away from project-specific single project requests. We try to lean more towards programmatic and policy requests that will help more than just a single entity or a single project. So that is something we don't outright say we won't work on an individual project, but that's something that we do consider as we go through which requests we're able to complete and which ones we're not. So yeah, feel free to email us, and if we can't help you through this program, we can always look around and see if there's other programs that you might be able to reach out to for assistance.
Great. Well, that's all the questions in the queue for now, and I just wanted to give you both, Alex and Erin, a chance to make any last parting points that you want to emphasize before we sign off.
Sure, yeah, this is Erin. I just want to say thank you again for listening, and please don't be shy and please don't hesitate. If you're interested in receiving technical assistance and you think you have a question that we may be able to help address and it fits within our criteria, reach out to us. I mean, the worst thing that we're going to say is it's either not within our scope and we'll try to point you towards another direction or we'll provide you with resources, but hopefully, as you can hear on the phone, we're friendly people, and we are always excited to help, and we want to do that, and the only way we can do that is if we hear from you. So please do reach out to us.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that we have a lot of experience working with states on refining those questions through the scoping call. So if you have a question you think is really general or you just don't know if it's ready, just submit it, and we will work with you to make sure that it fulfills your needs and it's within our capabilities.
And we look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you again, Erin and Alex, for that presentation and for all your work on this effort. And by all means, don't hesitate to get in touch with me either. And with that, I want to just turn it over to Samantha.
Thanks, Nate, and thank you so much, Alex and Erin, for presenting. I just want to leave you with some contact info on your screen here. There's Nate's contact info here at CESA and our website where you can find more resources at CESA.org. And we will be following up with you with a follow-up email. We'll send you a recording of this webinar and webinar slides. So if there's something that you missed, if you'd like to catch up on some of the details again, we'll be following up with you within about 24 hours. And thank you everyone for attending our webinar, and we hope to see you at a future webinar.